Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at Morphy's taking a look at a Venezuelan contract FN49 rifle. Venezuela was actually the very first country to order the FN49, and they did so actually in 1948 originally, when the rifle was still being called the FN48 before it actually got its final designation. Venezuela ordered 4,000 guns. They were delivered in mid-1949. They also, actually I should say it was 4,000 functional rifles and 12 cutaways to use for training. They would go on to make a second order in June of 1950 for another 4,000 guns. Those were delivered in June of 1951, giving Venezuela a grand total of 8,012 rifles, 12 of them being cutaways. That was the fifth largest order of FN49s that was placed. A little bit of FN trivia for you there. FN produced FN49 rifles for a bunch of different clients, and they're all pretty much the same, but they all have little minute variations. And a couple of the variations that apply to the Venezuelan guns are, first off, they were the only country that opted to take muzzle brakes on all of their rifles, so they all will have these on there. They were all semi-automatic rifles. Some countries ordered a mix of semi and full auto FN49s, and Venezuela's guns were all in 7mm Mauser, which is probably the nicest caliber for a rifle like this. Other clients would buy them in 8mm Mauser and 30-06. Both of those are definitely heavier recoiling cartridges than the 7, and frankly, 7 would be definitely the nicest one in my mind to actually shoot with. So Venezuela went with all 7mm Mauser FN49s. Now, let's go ahead and take a closer look at this. Let me show you some of the details, and we'll go ahead and take it apart because we've actually never done that with an FN49 here before. These are all going to be pretty standard for FN49s, Fabrique Nationale des Armes de Guerre, Herstal Belgique. And we have a serial number here, 4751. So this is in the second batch of Venezuelan guns, which is 4001 through 8000. And that serial number is repeated on a number of parts. This is an all-matching example. It's worth pointing out that on some FN49s, the stocks are numbered. The Venezuelans are not in that group, so there's no serial number on the stock, and there shouldn't be. Up here on the top of the receiver, we have a Venezuelan crest. It's pretty small, but it is on there, and that will also be on all of these. The first batch of Venezuelan guns don't have any marks on the stock at all, but the second batch, like this one, do. So one of those is a roundel here, Fuerzas Armadas Venezuela. That means armed forces. There is, by the way, some misconception. Some people will look at it and say, these were ordered by the Venezuelan Navy, the Armada. However, this translates into armed forces. It's an area that can also mean Navy in some contexts, but these rifles are actually ordered by the Venezuelan Army. The other mark is this. That's an LR, fancy letters entwined in front of the magazine, and that's the acceptance stamp for the Belgian Foreign Acceptance Service. And this was essentially a service that the FN factory offered where some Belgian officers would act as an inspection team for foreign contracts. So Venezuela, for example, didn't have to send a team of officers to inspect all of their rifles. The Belgians would do it for them for a fee, and that's the mark that they used to approve the guns. There are a few other very subtle differences between first and second contracts from the Venezuelans. The first contract will have locking screws here with 3 little cutouts. This one has 4 and also has cutouts back here. That's really subtle, but this is completely correct. This is appropriate for a second Venezuelan contract. As for universal features, all of the Venezuelan guns will have corrugated steel butt plates like this. As I mentioned earlier, they all have this 6-slot muzzle brake attached from the factory, as well as a bayonet lug. Some FN49s will have a recoil lug in the stock. The Venezuelan ones did not. And while the Venezuelan order did not include any scopes or sniper rifles outfitted, all of the Venezuelan contract guns do have the milling required to accept FN scope mounts. The magazine, of course, has a 10-round capacity. It is not removable, save when you disassemble the gun and take the whole trigger guard assembly off. That's standard for the FN49. Our disassembly begins back here with the receiver cover key. These, by the way, went through a couple of different iterations over the course of FN49 production. The Venezuelan ones all have this like a flat tab style. So what I'm going to do is rotate that up There we go. Once that's vertical, I can then pull the receiver cover forward, lift it up, and pull it out. That has our 2 nested recoil springs there. It's also, of course, got the rear sight. That is, by the way, an aperture rear sight, adjustable out to 10 or 1,000 meters. This lever is a manual bolt hold open, so you can pull the bolt back and lock it open. You can see that working right there if you need to. All I have to do to take the bolt out is slide it back to, let's see, right about in here somewhere. There we go. Bolt lifts out of the receiver, and then we can take, well, the bolt carrier lifts out, and then we can take the bolt out of the bolt carrier. This is a tilting bolt style of action. So if I put that back in there, this is the unlocked position. This is the locked position. You'll notice the rear lug here drops down slightly. It's pretty subtle, but it is higher in the traveling position, lower in the locked position. And that shiny surface right there locks against this lug right here in the bottom of the receiver. So that's how the gun locks. Next up, I'm going to pull the screw, I've already unscrewed it, here at the front of the stock, and I've unscrewed this as well. I'm going to open up the barrel band, and now I can slide this little retainer off. I can then take off the front part of the handguard. Now, originally the Venezuelan guns all had single-piece upper handguards, but some of them were cut in half for easier disassembly at some point, and it appears that this is one of those. So there's the front section of the handguard. I can then slide the barrel band off. I can take out the rear section of the handguard, and now we can look at the gas system. Fundamentally, this is a short stroke gas piston system, so it's going to tap gas here. It's going to come back, it's going to hit this piston. When that piston comes back, it's going to push through the receiver right there, where it is going to hit the bolt carrier right there, where you can see a little bit of discoloration, and that provides enough impetus to push the bolt back and cycle. We do actually have an adjustable gas system on here. This has this threaded on cover, and as I unscrew this, you can see that we're opening up a little slot right there, and the gas piston is cycling inside that. So as I screw this backwards, I'm essentially venting some of the gas earlier before it has a chance to work on the gas piston. So all the way down, which is how I found this rifle when I first disassembled it, that is maximum power to the gas system. And then as I screw it back this way, it's going to give it less and less gas into the system. Now, we also have a gas plug in here, and you'll notice it's marked A on that side. But if I push the button in and rotate it around, it's marked R on the other side, and that's actually automatic and repetition. But that doesn't mean semi and full, that means semi-auto. A, automatic is like it automatically cycles itself. R, repetition, essentially means you've turned it into a straight pull bolt action rifle. This cuts off all the gas for using rifle grenades, should you want to. I don't think Venezuela ever did, but that was built into the design of the SAFN or FN49 gas system. Now I can also push this in and rotate it halfway. There we go, and then pull it out entirely. So you can see that we have a gas port on it right there. The R marking would be pointing up. The active side, so the gas port, if it's going to work, you want the gas port facing down like that. That's the side marked A. If you have it facing up, it's sitting right here, and that's cutting off the connection between the barrel and the gas port. So that's the rifle grenade setting. With the gas plug removed, I can take the gas piston out. It comes forward, out like that, along with its return spring. So this is a short stroke gas piston system, but it is not really based on the Tokarev model, where the piston is in several component pieces and can be removed without having to come through the front of the gas block. I'm going to go ahead and leave the trigger guard in this one. There's really not much else to see down there. This is a hammer-fired gun, so there's the hammer. It does lock open automatically when empty. You can see this plunger right there connected to the magazine follower. So as long as there are cartridges, that's down and the bolt can travel. When it's empty, that lifts up and it stops the bolt. That right there is the ejector, fixed ejector, and that's pretty much all there is to it. We know that Venezuela did issue and use at least some of the FN49s that it got. There are some pictures from some civil unrest in Venezuela in the 50s that show military in the streets with Venezuelan FN49s. However, Venezuela didn't have any external military adventures going on during the period when they had these, so it'd be pretty well sure that these didn't actually see any military service outside of Venezuelan borders. Now, Venezuela was also a very early adopter of the FAL. They adopted that rifle in 1954, again, really, really early. And so I suspect a lot of the FN49s they didn't get around to issuing, and then within just a couple of years, remember, their second batch of FN49s arrived in mid-51, and in 54 they're adopting the FAL. So they probably had guns that, well, you know, we were going to issue these out, but now we have FALs, so they're kind of excess and unnecessary. In 1966, Venezuela would offer up essentially all of its FN49s for sale. They were purchased by InterArms and shipped back into the US. We don't know exactly how many Century brought in, but they haven't really turned up anywhere else, and it's most likely that basically all of them went to Century in 66. And then the sales ads that ran in the 60s in the US did have various conditions, including ones that did definitely see some use, and some that were essentially unissued like new. This one's a pretty darn good example of unissued and pretty much like new. The stock cartouches are very crisp, the finish is in excellent condition. It's a gorgeous example of an FN49. So big thanks to Morpheus for giving us the chance to take a look at it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.